Hello, hello, hello. How are you? Welcome to Cheryl's Corner. I'm so glad that you are back with me today. We have a lot to unpack, and I'm just asking that you get comfortable. Subscribe to my channel. We're doing really great. I have a calling on my life. I'm Cheryl. I am a mom of two. I'm a G mom of one. And I have been thinking for a moment and in prayer. And I want to incorporate the magic of Disney with the magic of Christianity. I want to bring some movies into our conversation and to see how they play a role in Christianity and the parallels. I had a chance, friends, to see Finding Nemo. Remember that one? If you have young children, I highly recommend it for teenagers, for young adults, and even for elderlies, because it's a message with that. So revisit Finding Nemo. That's one of Disney's all-time favorites. When I watched it, it began with Marlin and Coral. And Marlin had this beautiful home for his wife. And they were expecting 400 fish. There were these little eggs, and Marlin wanted the fish to be named Marlin Juniors, pretty much. And Coral wanted the name Nemo. So he was like, oh, okay, we'll have one named Nemo. Unfortunately, a barracuda came into their home that they had not long been a part of and killed Cora and all the eggs except one. So when Marlin saw that there was one surviving egg, he knew that his wife, Coral, wanted that name to be Nemo. That was her name. So at the hatching of the egg, the birth came Nemo. So that's pretty much what our story is about. Remember? Finding Nemo. So Marlin found himself a widow. So this also is a message to single people, to widows and widowers, even to the married. There's always a story and a great storyline. So when Nemo became of age, he was excited about going to school. He wanted to learn. So he was super excited about his school. So he woke up his dad. Come on, Dad, we have to go. And the dad being so cautious because he had known the life of what had happened to his family and his wife. So he was an overprotective father. You know, some overprotective parents, some overprotective fathers, overprotective mothers, grandmothers, friends. Sometimes that is to protect us, saints. When he got there, he was, Nemo, stop, and he wanted to be just as adventurous as the other young lads in the sea. And being who he was and curious, he was caught. I'm speaking of Nemo. He was caught from a diver's net. And as the father could not reach him in enough time, he had to go through the pain and agony of seeing his son pulled into the boat and separated from him. That caused him great pain, great agony. And I would just like to put a note, saints, no matter how hard the pain is, how deep the separation is, I would entrust you to keep your hand in God's hand. So the adventure began. He was adamant, Marlin, the father, was so adamant about finding his one and only precious son, Nemo. As he swam to look and in search of his son who had been separated, he come in contact with a beautiful blue fish named Dory. And Dory is so characteristic of just people in life. She remembers some things, but a whole lot of things she had memory loss on. So not only was this a journey for Marlin, it also became a journey for Dora. They encountered many obstacles. Are you familiar with obstacles and how they may sometimes beset us on our journey? Sometimes we have obstacles of getting a better education, and it seems like we just can't get transportation to school. Sometimes we may have separation from a parent or a loved one. Sometimes we may be imprisoned for crimes and wrongdoings that we have. It's just a plethora of many reasons why we become separated from our loved ones. And it's always a lesson to be learned. So they encountered, Dora and Marlin encountered sharks, and they even encountered jellyfish. They met a school of fish, and they were not paying Marlin any attention. And look how good God is. He always have a ram in the bush. And even though Dory had her setbacks, she was the one who could reach the language to the school of fish. And they didn't want to hear Marlin, but they had no problem listening to Dory. And Dory spoke their language. Isn't it good to have a friend, a loved one, an acquaintance who, when we are not understood, we have an advocate that can explain things to us and that can get us past where we need to get to. So they were pretty much telling Marlin, be quiet, man. Don't be rude to the lady. So with that being said, they were able to listen to her, and she went on her story to tell them, I'm trying to help him find his son Nemo, who was taken by a diver and a net and caught and put on a boat. So the school of fish pointed the direction. And sometimes we need God just put different paths and steps in our place so we can get from point A to point B to point C to point D. Along the journey, we're learning as we elevate. So as we go through life, it doesn't always just come from A to Z. We have to go from A to B to C to D. And it's always a purpose and a plan. God has a purpose and a plan for our lives. And with determination, Nemo decided, Dory, look like you're the one for now. So they had this adventure together, and they were making monumental steps along the way. And it was great. And it came to a point when the school of fish say, the instructions was clear. Don't go over the trench, but swim through the trench. Shortly, they encounter the trench. And Dory was like, oh, no, I can't remember. And she was a little bit wacky. I don't know. And Marlin, being the dominating figure, more masculinity, maybe he was just a leader. But he was like, no, let's go over. It's so much clearer when we go over. But they were given instructions to go through the trench. They went over the trench. And there was this cute little jellyfish that entered into Dory's path. So while she entertained this jellyfish, shortly afterward, a whole swarm of jellyfish, they found themselves entangled. So have it ever been a moment when you know, I think I may have made a misstep. I think I should have gone right, but I went left. I think I should have gone east, but I went west. I think I should have gone up, but I went down. And with the instructions that they deviated from, it got them in a quagmire. It got them in a situation. And it was a daunting situation because they had to think on how were they getting out. But even though sometimes, saints, we make a path that God hasn't directed us on or given instructions for us to do, in spite of it all, He's still there to rescue us. All you have to do is call on the name of Christ. I'm taking a moment to show you just how this Disney film, Finding Nemo, can be parallel with Christianity and life lessons that we can learn. And I trust and hope that you're following me so. It is such an opportunity to be with you. So as they encountered the different obstacles along the way, they persevered because Marlin was just determined to find his lost son. He was determined to find Nemo. And through it all, sometimes we have to go through the battle. We have to go through the waters. We have to go through the high seas. We have to go down in the valley before we can be uplifted to the mountaintop. But if you persevere, if you keep your hand in God's hand, He will land you safe on your feet. I'm a witness to that. He's done so much for me, I can't count it all. But every day I count my blessings, and I do name them one by one. And I would suggest to you to find that moment and that spot to never lose sight of Christ. Nemo ends up in a dentist's office in a tank with other fish. The diver deposits him into a dentist's office. The dentist had plans for his little young niece to have a fish. So they knew that that was the purpose of Nemo. God is a merciful God. He is a forgiving God. He is a faithful God. So even though Nemo did not stop and heed caution when his father told him to, that's what started the journey because of his disobedience to his father. But there's not just a lesson for Nemo, there's a lesson for Dory, and there's a lesson for the pelican also, and there's a lesson for Marlin. So God put people and ideas into our path. When they arrived at the dentist's office, he met Gil. Gil wanted so much to go back into the ocean when he found out that Nemo was from the wide ocean with numerous possibilities. And it's just a life that he enjoyed and longed to return to. They did everything that they could. And God always have a ram in the bush. With all the fish that were in the tank in the dentist's office, Nemo was the only one small enough to get into the filter, to clog it, to infiltrate and pollute the tank. They wanted to pollute the tank because with that, they knew that the dentist would have to take them out to clean the tank. Hallelujah. How many of us need cleaning up? How many of us are in polluted waters? How many of us have found ourselves in situations that we didn't know that would be the result of, and we're longing for our path way back home? He did what he was instructed to do, and it did not pan out the way that Gil had instructed him. They felt like his life, he almost lost Nemo. He lodged a rock into the motor of the tank and it discharged, and it almost cost Nemo his life. So the other fish in the tank would say, oh, no more of that. We're not going to even try anymore. I know we want to get out and we want to have a life and we want to return back to the things that are familiar to us. But that was way too dangerous and we will not put Nemo back into that. Unbeknownst, there was this pelican. He would bring news and information in the window of the dentist's office. And he was talking, how cool is it that this young man Marlin is just gone through sharks and barracudas and all type of things to land his son. He wants to retrieve his son, Nemo. And Nemo was just like, that couldn't be my dad, because he saw his dad as a coward, as someone that was fearful of the ocean, that didn't like taking chances. However, his dad was taking every chance and every opportunity to find his loved one. And as the story goes, I would like to tell you guys, watch Nemo and kind of follow along with the story as I have given a small synopsis of it. But I'm reminded of God's love is patient. God's love is kind. It is unyielding. They did land on their feet. They were excited about the life. When I think about Finding Nemo, I'm thinking about the prodigal son and how he had left home. He wanted his riches from his father, and his father gave it to him. And as he traveled the land, he had friends galore. He had friends on the left, friends on the right. He did it all. And when the money ran out, the friends ran out. He found himself in a famine. He ended up being a rich man's son. He ended up getting a job as a slave just to feed himself. And he fed pigs. He didn't just find himself feeding pigs. He was in a pig's pen. But God saw beyond his faults and saw his need. And as the story of the prodigal son goes, even though he strayed from home, he started finding his way back to the father's house. And as he began to travel back to his father's house, his father looked down the road. Perhaps he had heard word in a land just next door and not far away, I saw your son. So his father saw the son coming back home. And when he saw him, he told him, put on a robe. I want the best robe. The robe just symbolized that you're welcome back into the family. Put on a ring. What does the ring symbolize? It symbolizes authority. I want you to put him on some sandals. He's not going to walk barefoot. His sandals is going to trod in the preparation of Christ, because he is welcome back into the home. And as in Finding Nemo, he was proudly, eagerly, aggressively, patiently welcomed back into Marlin's fold. And that is the story. So please look at these things and find parallels. It is my hope and dreams that you stick with me. We're going to go on adventures. I want the children to be involved. I want this to be a family occasion. And I'm just asking for an opportunity to search my heart. I have a great desire to live for Christ and to bring joy, happiness, and peace. I'm asking, please comment. If you say no more than Nemo, if you say no more than the prodigal son, if you say no more than amen, I need a word. Just let me know. Subscribe to my channel, because I know we're going to get there. And it's going to be a blessing when we do. Subscribe, like, and I need a comment. The first 5, I'm looking for you. Come on, I need 5 to come. Give me a comment and subscribe. Thank you for Cheryl's Corner. I will have, as usual, my tea. And I chose a glass that has sea urchins and creatures on it. Join me again, Cheryl's Corner.